Let's talk about video game playground rumors. I remember back in 3rd grade when me and my friends were talking about handheld devices like the DS, the DSi, and the Game Boy Advance. We'd sometimes sneak our devices out at recess when we weren't supposed to, but there was this little corner where the recess teachers for some reason wouldn't look. This was around the same time when the 3DS was announced at E3, so a lot of us were flipping out about that. We talked about some of our favorite games like Scribblenauts, The Legend of Zelda, Animal Crossing, Metroid, etc. We would also talk about Flipnote Studio and look up tutorials on how to watch YouTube videos on your DSi. There were rumors spreading around about this website called DSiTube, which was apparently a website where you could watch YouTube videos on your DSi, when really it was just a site for uploading GIFs. Even though I was disappointed as a little kid that you couldn't watch videos on the internet browser, I did slowly gain an appreciation for Flipnote Hatena. It was cool how you could upload your animations online with your DSi, and I thought it was kinda neat how you could make your own communities. But back to talking about games, one of my all-time favorite games on the Nintendo DS was Super Mario 64 DS. Me and my friends would talk for hours about this game. I know that a lot of people don't like it because the controls for it are a little bit different compared to the Nintendo 64 version. For example, you have a T-pad on the DS, whereas on the Nintendo 64 version you had an analog stick. And since it uses a T-pad, there's kind of limitations with the movement, and now you have to hold down the Y button to run. Yeah, I get it. The thing is that I don't really care. I still really enjoy the game. This was a really good alternative for young kids that didn't really own a Nintendo 64. I mean, I did, but I didn't really play it that much. We had it packed in storage, and I can only remember playing like Mario Kart 64 once maybe, but when I got a DS, I spent like a whole bunch of time on that. So for younger generations, this version of the game was the one that a lot of us were introduced to. And I also still like it more because there's more stars to collect and there's more unlockable characters. I like that for once you can play as Yoshi in 3D. I like that Luigi has that little jump. I always thought it was kind of weird how you could play as Wario though, because Wario's not really in a lot of main series Mario games. Yes, he did start out in one, but Daisy also started in a main series Mario game, and she's hardly in any main series Mario games. I wish she wasn't. I wish her and Waluigi were in more main series Mario games. I think they're really charming characters. But it's still cool that you get to play as Wario. I'm not complaining, just I thought it was kind of odd. And at the same time, though, I did like how he played. I mean, yeah, his jumps weren't great, but him being the strong one was kind of fun. Maybe it's just a guilty pleasure for me. But yeah, me and my friends would talk about this game all the time on the playground. I remember one friend of mine didn't know that you could unlock stars by collecting 100 coins in each level. So then the next day she thanked me so much for telling her that. I remember a friend told me that you could shoot out of a cannon in the tower level and like shoot at the specific wall and it would break and then a star would pop out, and that like shocked me when I actually executed that. But if you know kids, there's always lies, there's always rumors, there's always stuff going on the playground. Good thing this wasn't a middle school, otherwise they probably would have been pretty pathetic rumors. But in elementary, I mean, it's kind of cute. So I remember recalling a rumor online of this article. It had something called like purple prizes, and it had this page showing Waluigi being unlockable in Super Mario 64 DS. And it was like this poorly out-of-place model of Waluigi. I actually saw this on DeviantArt, by the way, and I read through the description, and the user said that they did not make this cover, and that they found it in a magazine. So I just wanted to like talk about that with my friends the next day, and I was like, hey, did you know Waluigi is in this game? And all of them said no, of course. And all of them said that they hadn't unlocked him, obviously. But there was one specific kid. Okay, after recess, we would line up and wait for our teacher to come and pick us up, and we'd walk in a line to our classroom. And I remember talking about this game, and one kid overheard us, and he was like, hey, I've unlocked Waluigi in Super Mario 64 DS. And I was like, what? How did you do it? And here's what he told me. He told me that you had to go into the world where you unlock Wario, which the way you unlock Wario is you grab one of those power flowers as Luigi, you walk into that mirror, and then it takes you to the Wario painting, and then you jump in. And so what you gotta do, you had to collect like 100 coins in that level, which in those secret levels where you unlock characters, you don't get a star for collecting 100 coins, and also in those levels there usually wasn't 100 coins for that specific reason. But in this case you had to, and you had to grab the Wario cap to disguise yourself as Wario. So then you're stuck with like, I don't know, you had like 89 coins or something left that you collected in the entire level, or that's how many you can get in the entire level. But here's the trick, when you get to the boss, when you start kicking him in the face, like, repeatedly, sometimes he drops out coins, and you have to do that repeatedly until it reaches to 100. When you reach it to 100 coins, you'd get a big mushroom, and then with that big mushroom, you'd turn into a bigger Wario. Then you gotta fight the boss and play as the big Wario and fight him until, like, he basically dies. Then what he said you had to do was finish the level, essentially. You'd go back into the mirror room as Luigi, go back into that mirror area, and then you'd open the door, and there would be a Waluigi key door and a Waluigi painting. Then after that, he said that you obviously jump into the Waluigi painting, and when you're there, you're in this thing called the negative world or something. And basically, it's the exact same, like, hub world and everything as Peach's castle. The only difference is that when you go into the, that little corner at the castle, there's like a giant block that's basically like a hidden secret, like a hidden painting. So then you jump in there, and there would be this massive Donkey Kong. That's what he told me. He told me that Donkey Kong's in the game, and like he's a boss. Like right before you fight him, he has this text box, and he emphasizes how much he's going to beat you with this banana. He like said that in that voice, is what my friend told me. And then, I don't know, he said something like you stomp on the bananas, then you pick, it turns into a banana peel, then you pick it up and then throw it at Donkey Kong or something, or that he throws barrels. And then right after that, right after you defeat Donkey Kong, you get this tube, you get one of the warp pipes, you jump in it, and then there's a piranha plant that you have to fight. And I completely forgot how you defeat it, but you do. And then once you do that, you get the key, and then you go back into that mirror room, and then you unlock Waluigi. As soon as he told me all of this, my friend, I went home, I tried this thing out, and it didn't work. It did not work. So then at recess, I went over to my friend and I was like, bruh, did you lie to me? And then he was like, no, I left some stuff out. And I was like, okay, then what else could I possibly do? I did exactly what you told me to do. And he was like, you need to collect all 150 stars in the game. And I was like, oh shit, you're right. Okay, I'll go back. And so for a couple of weeks, I eventually 100% beated the game. I got all of the stars, and I followed his advice. And to come to my surprise, actually, believe it or not, when you do fight that boss, there is a giant mushroom that does come out. It took me like, I had to reach to like 113 coins to get it, but you do actually get a mushroom when you fight that boss, and that shocked me as a kid. I was starting to think, oh my god, this is real. But when I defeated the boss as Giant Wario, nothing still happened. There was no Waluigi door, there was no painting, there was no negative world, there was no Donkey Kong. I was confused. I was like, what did I do wrong? What happened? And so one day at a bowling alley birthday party thing, that kid showed up to the party that I was at, and I brought my DS with me this time. I brought it with me, and I was like, dude, how do you unlock Waluigi? Can you actually show me with the DS? He was like, you have to go over here into the mirror area. And he was showing me, and he was like, go in this painting. And it was it was a painting that you couldn't even jump into. So I was like, you can't jump into that painting. And then my friend was all like, I gotta go. My mom's home. And then his mom was actually home. And unfortunately, I never got to know the rest of the story that guy had to say, to explain, because he moved away, and I have not seen him since. This was in 3rd grade, keep in mind. Still have not seen him, still have not heard any information. So, that was a complete lie, and the reason why I know it was a lie is because years later, when I looked back at this, I figured out, like, the ideas that he had, everything he was telling me, was just a rumor he probably also heard online, because I looked it up and there was this video by www.wario and it says the exact same thing, although it does have photos, which I thought was interesting, even though they're obviously edited. But this was like in the 2010s and Photoshop wasn't used as much. When it was like poorly made on like DeviantArt and stuff, and it was obviously fake. But the images were up, a lot of people were believing it, and it had like that same negative world stuff. It had the piranha plant boss, it had the Waluigi door, and said that there was a painting and that like you had to go into that mirror Wario level and become giant Wario with the mushroom and stuff. There was no mention of Donkey Kong though. That entire thing that kid made up. So yeah, I was so sad. And then like, on one of Wario's videos, he eventually contacted Nintendo, and Nintendo responded him with, "No, Waluigi's not in the game." So yeah, playground rumors. What's funny though is that with Wario's video, he didn't take the pictures. He was contacted by some other YouTuber who showed him the pictures of him unlocking Waluigi in the game, and then he just disappeared from YouTube. And you know, I think this whole situation is pretty hilarious. And by the way, that poster from that magazine with the purple prizes, that was completely fake. That was made by some Nintendo executive in a Nintendo Power magazine, I think. So that explains how the rumor started. But even today, or like in recent years, videos about Waluigi being in Super Mario 64 DS have decreased, but it's still kind of going on, surprisingly, even though Nintendo has basically flat out said, no, he's not in the game. One of the big reasons why this rumor has also decreased, though, was because mods became more popular. Nowadays, you can probably mod Super Mario 64 and play as a modded version of a character that looks like Waluigi. Hell, there's a guy making his own fan game with the Super Mario 64 DS software. He says it's going to be bigger than Odyssey. There is one thing I did find odd when I was little though. There used to be this unlicensed product at Walmart that you could buy called Action Replay DSi. Basically what you would do is you'd hack into DS games, type in cheat codes on a website, insert them into the game, and then be able to do weird things like moon jump, have unlimited lives, be invincible, etc. I remember one time I hacked into the game where you could actually play as Yoshi in the Wario level. Yoshi is not supposed to be playable in that level. Yet when the text box appears for the boss, the guy does question why Yoshi doesn't have a mustache. Yoshi is the only playable character that does not have a mustache in this game. So was Yoshi originally going to be playable in that level, or was Nintendo kind of aware? Either way, it does show a sign that there were more plans for this game. Maybe Waluigi was originally supposed to be playable here. Again, why are Waluigi, Daisy, and all these other characters not in main series games? Nintendo really needs to confirm that. Another rumor I heard about when I was little was something called the Tails Doll curse. Now, if you don't know who Tails Doll is, he's a character from the game Sonic R. He's basically like the Metal Sonic of Tails. You know how there's Metal Knuckles in Sonic R and you can play as Metal Sonic? Well, here's Tails Doll. He was a robot invented by Dr. Robotnik. Not really anything else worth noting about him. So how would a playground rumor start with this guy? Well, here's the story. Apparently, if you listen to one of the tracks from the game Sonic R backwards, a song like Living in the City or Can You Feel the Sunshine, which is the most iconic one, if you listen to that in the bathroom while it's dark and it's like 12 a.m., you'll start to see a glowing red light. Afterwards, you'll start getting like death threat notes and weird bloody writings on your walls, and one night, the Tails Doll will eventually pop out in your room and ask if he can have your soul for all eternity. And if you refuse, you'll just die. Now, when I was little, I was already terrified of dolls, so this scared the shit out of me. I remember hearing about it on Yahoo Answers. Originally when I first saw Tails Doll, I thought he was some fan character, but then later found out he was actually in an official Sonic game. What doesn't help is that I saw weird, creepy fan art of this thing, and there were YouTube videos showing quote-unquote evidence of the curse working. And not only that, but one day when I was at church, I asked like a priest about this. He told me it's like dangerous to perform stuff like this because there's actual curses like that can happen. And he told me specifically not to say weird things in front of mirrors. So then I kind of got a fear of mirrors right after he said that, and it made me want to believe the curse even more. Instead of following the priest's advice, I decided the next day at school I would tell more people about the curse, and we all decided to team up, have a sleepover, and decide to catch the Tails doll and demolish his evil schemes once and for all. Funny thing is that it was actually Halloween when this all happened. So there was a park that I lived right next to, and we all lived in the same neighborhood, so we all met up there, and we planned everything out. Our neighborhood was huge though, back in those days, so there was so much going on. There were like haunted houses that we could go into, quote unquote haunted, just like fun stuff. It was a complete blast. It was a fun time, and that went on for hours. We went to my house, we ate kid cuisine, and we had this whole plan of catching the Tails doll at like 3 a.m. We were gonna wait until everyone was asleep. We did the curse, and basically my ass cheeks were clenching the entire time because it was terrifying to me, thinking about that story, thinking about like, oh my god, Tails doll is real, you guys. I did think it was kind of cool though, thinking that like Sonic character was real, because then that led me into thinking like, oh my god, what if Sonic, Tails, and Amy Rose and Knuckles and all these characters are all real, and what if they save us or something? And of course, I didn't see any glowing red light, but some kid with us said that he saw that, and that kind of freaked everyone out. So we kind of armed ourselves with like Nerf guns and stuff. I grabbed this plastic SpongeBob jellyfishing net, thinking that like I could catch the Tails doll with that. It was just this cheap toy. I apologize, I just noticed that I've been saying like a lot in this video. I'm gonna try to prevent that. But anyway, what happened was we didn't go to sleep. As little kids, that was kind of easy. I remember sometimes I would intentionally just stay up until morning, just force myself not to be tired. I can't do that anymore now. I'm 19 years old. For some reason, if it's like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., I'm just out. I cannot do that. If I somehow stay up until the next morning, I'm just gonna fall asleep the entire day. But yeah, we stayed up until 3 a.m. looking for the Tails doll. We checked the bathroom. We slowly creaked out into the living room, and I had a big living room back then, so it was kind of scary. And doing this kind of stuff is better when you're with friends, because when it's dark, pitch black, and there's a complete lack of noise. But the fact that I had friends with me, it was still scary to me as a little kid, but it was less scary. We checked all of the rooms, and nothing was wrong. Nothing abnormal. We tried to summon the Tails doll by doing this fake seance that wouldn't have worked for anything. We just started saying random gibberish, thinking that it would work. You know, kind of similar to how when you're little and you start randomly typing on a keyboard, you think that you're hacking, but really you're not. That's what we did. The one room we didn't check, though, was my parents' room, and I was kind of hesitant doing that because my parents would be pissed off if I just randomly walked into their room in the middle of the night, you know, but we ultimately decided that we were going to go in there anyway, because rebellious, defiant, biological children, they all do that. I decided I would be the one who would open my parents' door. My friends were the guests. I was the person hosting this whole thing. It's my house, so I figured, okay, I should probably be the one responsible. And I was about to open the door. I was very slowly doing it, and like I said in my previous video, I was a sensitive kid. So I hesitated a lot and kept asking what if a lot. And my friends were telling me, dude, just do it. Or we were debating whether or not this whole thing was worth it. So when I was about to finally just open the door, I was sweating, I was scared, I was kind of crying a little bit. All of a sudden it already opened, and we saw a dark, shadowy figure, and all of us screamed. And of course, it wasn't the Tails doll, it was my dad. We obviously kind of got in trouble. We had to go to bed, and we just slept on it. We kind of just concluded that the curse wasn't real, but we had a good time doing it. I still have nostalgia thinking about that memory, you know? The same way I have nostalgia about Super Mario 64 DS. Funny thing is that my dad figured out what we were doing, not because we told him, but because he looked at his computer, which I used a lot, and he was like, Sterling, why are you looking up this Tails doll curse thing on my computer? I don't want you doing that. Clearly, this whole thing, it's obviously a ripoff of the Bloody Mary curse. You know, you stare in a mirror, you say a bunch of words, and then something happens, bad stuff happens afterwards. It's the exact same story, you know? But yeah, that's a good memory. This was probably one of the first creepypastas I ever heard. It was the first gaming creepypasta I at least heard. Another gaming creepypasta I heard about afterwards as I got older, I think I was in 5th grade when I figured out about this thing, is Sonic.exe. I'm not going to explain the whole story because you can just look that up for yourself, or you probably already know what it is. Basically, this kid finds a Sonic game. He gets a note saying, I'm sorry that I had to give you this, but it's giving me like so much pain and all that crap. And so he plays the game, and it's really gory and really eerie, and Sonic is possessed or something, and he starts killing off characters, and the game starts talking to the player directly. It's just a cliche catastrophe of the horror genre. But when I was little, that still scared me. And one of the reasons why it scared me, though, was because I had gotten a Sonic plushie during Christmas a month prior. I read the story, and at the end of Sonic.exe, one of the endings to the story, I'm sure there's a different alternative ending. The one that I read, though, it said that there was a bloody Sonic plushie that was found on the kid's bed at the end of the story. And when I heard that kind of just like, again, I'm kind of afraid of dolls and stuff. So hearing that and then looking at my Sonic plushie, I was a little bit scared. And so I took a picture of the plush. And kids on the playground were talking about this story too. I wasn't the only one who heard it. I showed my friends the plush and they were all like, the smile's kind of creepy. And then that just creeped me out even more. And then I read a DeviantArt note post that someone made saying that like, oh my gosh, is Sonic.exe real? This thing is scaring me. When I read the story, one of my Silver the Hedgehog fan art drawings turned brown. That terrified me too, thinking, oh my gosh, what if after I read the Sonic.exe story, something got into my plush and possessed it? But of course, now that I'm older, obviously that's bullshit, but I remember having trouble sleeping at night, like having to move that thing away from me, that plush. And now I actually have it, and it's actually kind of valuable, surprisingly. At least when you have the blanket and it's still in the package. I don't have it in the package, so I guess mine isn't valuable, but that plush is worth a lot of money if you have it in good condition. I know it's not haunted, nothing bad has happened or anything, but yeah, that's another Sonic creepypasta memory I have. Those are really my only two memories and experiences I had with gaming creepypasta as a child, but I do remember people talking about Ben Drowned and Herobrine, but when I heard about those, I was getting older, so the creepypasta phase was kind of off my shoulders. And also, Slender Man never really scared me when I was little either, because it was just a blank face. And what really terrified me was like anything with dark eyes and teeth or yellow eyes or something bloody. That type of stuff always scared me. Just seeing a blank face, I never got anything out of that. And also the fact that it was an actual game kind of made me think that there's no urban legend correlated with this. This is just something some creator made up. Same thing with Five Nights at Freddy's, kind of. I do remember researching information about this rumor, talking about how like there's a real Five Nights at Freddy's, there's a real Freddy Fazbear's Pizza that exists. And I remember looking into that deeply and even doing a report on it at school. But even during that time, I was thinking, no, this isn't real. This clearly isn't real, but it is interesting. Five Nights at Freddy's came out when I was like in middle school, so again, the creepypasta phase was out of me at that point. While I was slightly disappointed that a real Freddy Fazbear's Pizza didn't exist, it did lead me into figuring out about something called the Rockafire Explosion, and it kind of intrigues me. Although these stories are clearly fake, there are some pretty creepy things about some video games. For example, in Super Mario Galaxy 2, there's a stage where these 3 shadow figures follow you throughout the entire stage. Someone actually hacked into the game's files and found that those 3 figures were titled Hell Valley Death Trees. That is kind of weird, and Nintendo still hasn't confirmed why they implemented this to this day. In Super Mario 3D Land, if you stand next to one of the graves right next to the flagpole of this certain ghost level, there's this creepy figure that just fades in and then fades away screaming. In Microsoft Office 95, there's this little game that you can get into that's pretty poorly made and complicated to get through, but if you complete it, there's this little 3D hallway that has this screen that's called Hall of Tortured Souls, and it shows an image of some developers. Polybius is an old urban legend you've probably heard of. Allegedly back in 1981, this machine popped up in arcades, and instead of inserting coins, you would give your coins to these two men in black suits. Apparently the game actually caused suicidal thoughts, seizures, and death. The big secret, allegedly, is that this was used by the government to test mind control. While Polybius probably isn't real, there have been people who did die from playing video games. Kind of. There's people who have gotten sick from playing games way too much, and unfortunately there was one guy who got so sick and didn't realize he had this heart disease and died. Let's talk about cartoon stories that I heard. The first cartoon creepypasta I heard about was something called The Truth About Rugrats. The way I actually figured out about this was typing in The Truth and then just putting a space above, and one of the recommended searches was The Truth About Rugrats. I was curious, so then I clicked on it, and then I saw a whole bunch of Yahoo Answers questions of people asking, what is the truth about Rugrats? What is the story behind that? Again, I'm not going to explain the whole thing here, but basically all of the babies from Rugrats are just a part of Angelica's imagination, and she's schizophrenic. A lot of the babies that she's imagining were babies that her mom's friends were originally going to have, but a lot of them died, some of them were miscarriages, etc. Then it explains how Angelica had a really bad relationship with her mom and stuff, and she only had one friend. Her friend was Susie. When Angelica eventually died, Susie decided to make a Nickelodeon show based off of her imagination about the babies. This actually didn't scare me when I was little. I thought it was kind of disturbing and pretty whack, but it didn't really scare me. I was a little bit confused because I was young. I don't even think I knew what a miscarriage was, but it was odd. I remember one time my sister actually brought up the same exact story, and I was shocked that she heard about the same thing. But ultimately, and this is something I figured out when I was little, I did conclude that this story was fake because nobody named Susie was ahead of the show. Because of this story, a lot of other creepypastas involving other cartoons like The Truth About Hey Arnold started popping up. A lot of them also say that the characters are actually just in comas, or again, they're schizophrenic, or all of the characters are in purgatory. It's pretty strange. And a lot of them are also really dumb. The reason why this Rugrats thing probably intrigued me was because it was one of the first that actually started this genre, and it gave me an entirely different perspective of the show. Also, personally, I think this is actually the most in-depth one out of all of those The Truth About insert show. Another creepypasta I heard about involving cartoons was this story called Squidward's Suicide. In this story, right after SpongeBob finally revived after initially being cancelled after the first movie, a group of people play a tape called Squidward's Suicide. The episode has some weird imagery with these characters, like, for example, in the image that I'm showing you right now, Squidward's eyes are kind of fuzzy and disturbing looking, and it even shows some real gore images flashing throughout the episode. At the end, Squidward does shoot himself. This haunted the people who worked on the show so much that they all left, and that's apparently the explanation of why these writers and creators left the show after seasons 1 through 3. The biggest thing that creeped me out about this story was the gore factor about it. The fact that there were random images of children dead with their guts spilling out just in the episode itself, that kind of creeped me out. Here's the funny thing though, is that I remember on the playground, again, we were all talking about this story, all freaked out by it. There were YouTube videos saying, like, here's the alleged real lost episodes of Squidward's Suicide. And so I clicked on one of them thinking it was real, and I brought my phone out, we went to that same corner, and we watched the whole thing, and it was some poorly made Windows Movie Maker Microsoft Paint video. I use Windows Movie Maker, so I'm kind of biased. But yeah, it was made with that, and it was just stupid, but we were all still creeped out by it, and we all thought it was real, even though you can't post something like that on YouTube. And yeah, scary stuff. I remember researching if this episode was real, even when it was clearly obvious from the very beginning that it wasn't. And I won't lie, even though in hindsight, a lot of these creepypastas are stupid, no offense to anyone who made them, but I do kind of miss the charm of thinking some lost, disturbing episode of a cartoon I love or a haunted version of a game I love exist. Some sort of dark company secret. If we had never had fun getting scared, we wouldn't have had Halloween. These stories came out before a time where we could easily contact creators of shows and games and ask if any of these were real. Nowadays, it's pretty easy to do that. You know, through conventions and Q&As and sometimes social media even. Hell, SpongeBob and Gumball have actually made fun of their creepypastas before. But you know, we were still gullible enough to think that maybe, just maybe, these episodes might be real back in the day. I actually do have one thing to thank these creepypastas for. A lot of them spark popularity for the topic of lost media, and without that, my cancelled Jimmy Neutron sequel/season 4 video I made over the summer probably wouldn't have been uploaded and gained so many views. Real lost media is something I still really enjoy looking into today, not this third grade horror crap. But again, I'm still thankful for it. But yeah, playground rumors, creepypastas, dumb, but